Have you ever wondered what happens when duty collides with the human heart in the darkest moments of history? When everything you've sworn to protect suddenly stands between you and the one person who makes you feel truly alive? Tonight I'm going to share with you a story that challenges everything we think we know about loyalty, faith, and forbidden love during wartime. This isn't just another tale of romance against impossible odds. This is about two souls caught between their sacred vows and a connection so powerful it threatens to destroy everything they've dedicated their lives to. Picture this. The year is 1943. Europe is torn apart by the most devastating conflict humanity has ever witnessed. In a small convent nestled in the French countryside where ancient stone walls have witnessed centuries of prayer and devotion, something extraordinary is about to unfold, something that will test the very foundations of faith itself. Sister Catherine has spent the last 8 years of her life in service to others. Her hands have healed the wounded, her voice has comforted the dying, and her heart has remained steadfast in its commitment to her calling. She chose this life of sacrifice willingly, trading the possibility of earthly love for something she believed was far greater. Every morning, she rises before dawn to tend to those who need her most. Every evening, she kneels in prayer, seeking strength for another day of service. But war has a way of changing everything. Even the most sacred spaces cannot escape its reach. The wounded arrive at her convent almost daily now. Soldiers from both sides of this terrible conflict, their bodies broken, their spirits shattered. Sister Catherine treats them all the same. Pain knows no nationality. Suffering recognizes no uniform. Her vows demand nothing less than complete compassion for every soul who crosses her threshold. Then, on a rain-soaked November evening, everything changes. The heavy wooden doors of the convent burst open and two figures stumble inside, supporting a third between them. The injured man wears the uniform that should make Sister Catherine's blood run cold. He is the enemy. He represents everything her country is fighting against. But as she looks into his face, pale with pain and loss of blood, she sees something that stops her heart completely. She sees a human being who is dying. Without hesitation, she moves toward them. Her training takes over, pushing aside every other consideration. The two men who brought him speak in urgent whispers before disappearing back into the stormy night, leaving their wounded comrade in her care. As Sister Catherine begins her work, cutting away blood-soaked fabric and assessing his injuries, she notices something that makes her pause. His hands are gentle. Despite the calluses and scars that speak of a soldier's life, there's something refined about them. These aren't the hands of a man who delights in violence. These are the hands of someone who was forced into circumstances beyond his choosing. Officer Klaus Weber opens his eyes to find himself staring into the most compassionate face he has ever seen. For a moment, he forgets where he is, forgets who he is, forgets everything except the gentle touch of skilled hands working to save his life. When consciousness fully returns, he expects to see hatred in her eyes. He expects to be turned away, left to die as an enemy deserves. Instead, he finds mercy. Sister Catherine works through the night, her prayers whispered in rhythm with her ministrations. She knows the risks she's taking. Harboring an enemy officer could mean death for everyone in the convent. But her vows are clear. She is called to heal, not to judge. She is called to love, not to hate. As dawn breaks through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the infirmary, Klaus finds himself studying the woman who saved his life. Her face is serene, focused entirely on her work. There's no trace of fear, no hint of anger, only an absolute dedication to preserving life that both humbles and amazes him. When he tries to speak, his voice comes out as barely more than a whisper. He wants to thank her, to understand why she would risk everything for a stranger, for an enemy. But she places a finger gently against his lips, her eyes conveying what words cannot. Safety requires silence. Understanding transcends language. Over the following days, as Klaus slowly regains his strength, something extraordinary begins to develop between them. It starts with stolen glances across the small infirmary. It grows through whispered conversations in the dead of night when the other sisters sleep. It deepens with each shared moment of vulnerability, each glimpse into the person beneath the uniform and beneath the habit. Klaus tells her about his life before the war, how he studied literature at university, dreaming of becoming a teacher, how he wrote poetry in quiet moments, finding beauty even in the midst of destruction, how he was conscripted into service, forced to become something he never wanted to be. Sister Catherine listens with an understanding that reaches beyond words. She sees past the uniform to the man beneath, the gentle soul trapped in circumstances beyond his control. In turn, she shares her own story, how she entered the convent after losing her entire family to illness, how she found purpose in service, meaning in sacrifice, how her faith has been both her anchor and her burden through the darkest of times. Klaus listens with a respect that touches her deeply. He sees past the habit to the woman beneath, the caring heart that chose devotion over personal happiness. Neither of them intended for this to happen. Neither of them wanted to feel what they're beginning to feel. But the heart, it seems, recognizes no vows when it encounters its match. Love, real love, doesn't ask permission. It doesn't consider consequences. It simply exists, pure and undeniable and terrifying in its intensity. As Klaus grows stronger, they both know that time is running short. Soon, he will be well enough to leave. Soon, this impossible moment will end, and they will return to their separate worlds. The thought fills them both with a pain sharper than any physical wound. But fate, it seems, has other plans. One evening, as Sister Catherine checks on Klaus for the final time before he's scheduled to leave the next morning, she finds him sitting by the window, staring out at the stars. The moonlight catches the tears on his cheeks, and her heart breaks for the pain she sees there. Without thinking, without considering the consequences, she sits beside him. For a long moment, they simply exist in each other's presence, two souls on the edge of something that could destroy them both. Klaus turns to her, his eyes reflecting all the longing and anguish in his heart. Sister Catherine meets his gaze, her own eyes revealing the same impossible struggle. They are balanced on the knife's edge between duty and desire, between sacred vows and human need. What happens next will change everything. What happens next will test the very limits of faith, duty, and love itself. The choices they make in the coming hours will echo through their lives forever, challenging everything they thought they knew about right and wrong, about sacrifice and selfishness, about the true meaning of devotion. When Klaus reaches for her hand, Sister Catherine doesn't pull away. The touch sends electricity through both of them, a connection so profound it seems to illuminate the very air around them. In that moment, every barrier they've built, every wall they've erected to protect themselves from this impossible situation, comes crashing down. Klaus speaks first, his voice barely audible in the sacred silence of the convent. He tells her things he's never told another soul. About the nightmares that plague his sleep, filled with faces of those he's been forced to harm. About the letters he writes to his mother but never sends, knowing they might be intercepted. About the poetry he still composes in stolen moments, verses that speak of hope in a world gone mad. Sister Catherine listens with her whole being, her heart opening to receive his pain as she would receive communion. When he finishes, she shares her own hidden truths, the moments of doubt that have shaken her faith, the loneliness that sometimes overwhelms her in the small hours of the morning, the dreams she abandoned when she took her vows, dreams of a different life, a different love. As they talk, the distance between them gradually disappears. Not just the physical distance, but the spiritual and emotional barriers that should separate a nun from an enemy officer. They discover they share the same favorite passages from Scripture. They both find solace in the same hymns. They both believe in the power of mercy to transform even the darkest hearts. Hours pass like minutes. The rest of the world fades away until there is nothing but this room, this moment, these two hearts beating in dangerous synchrony. When Klaus tells her he loves her, the words hang in the air like a prayer both sacred and blasphemous. Sister Catherine's response comes not in words, but in tears. She loves him too, with a completeness that terrifies her. This love threatens everything she has built her life upon, yet it also feels like the truest thing she has ever experienced. How can something so wrong feel so absolutely right? They both know what this means. They both understand the impossibility of their situation. Klaus belongs to an army that has brought nothing but death to her country. Catherine belongs to God, bound by vows that brook no exception. Their love is not just forbidden by human law, but by divine commandment. Yet in this moment, surrounded by the evidence of God's mercy and the healing that has taken place, they dare to hope that love itself might be a form of prayer, that perhaps the same God who commands them to love their enemies might understand when that love becomes something deeper, something transformative. Klaus takes her face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. He promises her things that seem impossible in wartime. A life together after the conflict ends. A small house where they can tend a garden and read poetry to each other. Children who will know both of their languages and neither of their hatreds. Catherine closes her eyes and allows herself to imagine it. To picture herself not as Sister Catherine, but simply as Catherine, wife and mother, woman, beloved. The vision is so beautiful it breaks her heart, because she knows how unlikely it is to ever come to pass. But then Klaus speaks again, and his words change everything. He tells her he has been in contact with members of the resistance, that he has been secretly passing information to help Allied forces, that his injuries were not sustained in a battle, but as punishment for his betrayal of his own side, that he is no longer the enemy she thought him to be. This revelation should bring her relief, should make their love seem less impossible. Instead, it brings new terror. If Klaus has betrayed his army, he is a dead man walking. The moment he leaves the safety of the convent, he will be hunted by both sides. The resistance will never fully trust a German officer, no matter how sincere his conversion. His own people will show no mercy to a traitor. Catherine realizes with crystal clarity that she is not just falling in love with Klaus Weber. She is falling in love with a ghost, a man who may have only days or weeks left to live. This knowledge should make her pull away, should help her find the strength to end this before it destroys them both. Instead, it makes her love him more fiercely, more completely. If their time together is measured in hours rather than years, then every moment becomes infinitely precious. They spend the remainder of the night talking about everything and nothing. Klaus recites poetry in German while Catherine translates prayers into French. They share stories from their childhoods, dreams they once had, fears they've never spoken aloud. They memorize each other's faces, each other's voices, storing up treasures against the poverty of separation that awaits them. When dawn begins to creep through the windows, they both know that Klaus must leave. Every moment he remains puts the entire convent at risk, but as he prepares to go, Catherine makes a decision that will change everything. She removes her habit, not completely, not scandalously, but symbolically. She unpins her veil and lets her hair fall free for the first time in 8 years. Klaus stares at her in wonder, seeing not Sister Catherine, but simply Catherine, the woman beneath the religious calling. Her hair is longer than he expected, streaked with premature silver from years of worry and sacrifice. It frames her face like a halo, making her look both more human and more divine. In that moment, Catherine understands something that has eluded her throughout her years of service. Her vows to God need not exclude her capacity for human love. Her dedication to serving others need not mean the complete abandonment of her own heart. Perhaps there is a way to honor both callings, to serve both loves. Klaus understands, too. As he looks at Catherine with her hair flowing free, he sees not a fallen nun, but a woman who has chosen to be fully herself for the first time in years. Her faith is not diminished by her love for him. If anything, it seems more radiant, more alive. They do not make love in the physical sense, though the temptation is almost overwhelming. Instead, they make love with their words, their glances, their promises. They pledge themselves to each other in a ceremony of their own devising, witnessed only by the crucifix on the wall and the God they both serve in their different ways. When Klaus finally must leave, they part with a plan. He will make his way to the coast, where resistance fighters can help him cross to England. Catherine will find a way to leave the convent, officially requesting release from her vows. They will meet again in London, where Klaus can join the Free French forces and Catherine can serve as a nurse in the hospitals there. It is a desperate plan, full of impossible variables and deadly risks. But it is a plan born of love. And love, they have learned, makes even the impossible seem achievable. As Klaus disappears into the pre-dawn mist, Catherine stands at the window watching until she can no longer see him. Then she kneels before the altar in the convent chapel and begins to pray. Not for forgiveness, for she feels no shame in what has passed between them. Instead, she prays for strength, for guidance, and for the miracle that will be required to bring them together again. She prays for a love that has transformed them both, a love that has shown them new ways to serve God and humanity, a love that may be forbidden by the laws of men but feels blessed by something far greater than human understanding. The morning after Klaus's departure brings no peace to Catherine's troubled heart. She moves through her daily routines like a woman walking in a dream, her hands performing their familiar tasks while her mind remains fixed on the man who has vanished into the dangerous world beyond these walls. Every footstep in the corridor makes her pulse quicken. Every knock at the door sends hope and terror racing through her veins in equal measure. 3 days pass with no word. Catherine throws herself into her work with renewed intensity, tending to the steady stream of wounded who continue to arrive at their sanctuary. Each face she tends belongs to someone else's beloved, someone else's son or husband or brother. She whispers prayers over them all, but her heart carries a special ache for the one whose face she will never forget. The other sisters begin to notice the change in her. Sister Marie, who has served alongside Catherine for 6 years, remarks on the brightness in her eyes even as she observes the new tension in her shoulders. Mother Superior watches from a distance with the knowing gaze of a woman who has seen many souls struggle between earthly desires and heavenly calling. On the 4th morning, as Catherine kneels in the chapel for morning prayers, Mother Superior approaches and settles beside her on the worn wooden bench. They pray together in silence for long minutes before the older woman speaks. She tells Catherine that she knows what has transpired, that walls have ears and hearts leave traces that cannot be hidden from those who truly see. Catherine's blood turns to ice, expecting condemnation, preparing for punishment. Instead, Mother Superior speaks of her own youth, her own moment of choice between love and duty that brought her to this very convent 40 years ago. The revelation stuns Catherine into silence. This woman of unwavering faith, this pillar of devotion, once faced the same impossible decision that now tears at Catherine's soul. Mother Superior explains that love, true love, is never a sin, that God creates these connections for reasons beyond human understanding. But she also speaks of sacrifice, of the greater good, of the thousands of lives that depend on the sanctuary they have created here. Catherine listens with growing dread as Mother Superior explains the reports reaching them from the outside world. German forces are conducting systematic searches of religious buildings, seeking evidence of resistance activity. Any irregularity, any hint of collaboration with enemy forces could mean death for every woman in the convent. They walk a razor's edge between mercy and survival. Yet even as these harsh realities settle over them like a shroud, Mother Superior offers Catherine something unexpected, a choice that seems impossible, yet somehow real. Papers have arrived from the bishop's office, authorization for Catherine to serve as a medical volunteer with the resistance forces operating in the forests surrounding their region. It would mean leaving the convent, abandoning the safety of these walls for the deadly uncertainty of the underground war. Catherine's heart leaps at the possibility. This could be her path to Klaus, her way of serving both love and duty simultaneously. But Mother Superior continues with words that complicate everything. The resistance cell has specifically requested her because of her medical skills and her knowledge of the local terrain. They need someone who can establish field hospitals, someone who can tend to wounded fighters in conditions far more dangerous than anything she has faced within these walls. The assignment would last months, perhaps longer. There would be no way to communicate with the outside world, no means of discovering what has become of Klaus or whether he has safely reached England. She would be trading the certainty of one form of service for the absolute uncertainty of another. Catherine asks for time to consider, and Mother Superior grants her 3 days. As the older woman rises to leave, she places a weathered hand on Catherine's shoulder and speaks words that will haunt the younger nun for years to come. She says that some loves are meant to transform us even when they cannot be consummated. That perhaps the greatest act of love is sometimes letting go, trusting that the divine plan includes purposes we cannot see. Those 3 days stretch into an eternity of wrestling with forces that seem to pull her soul in every direction. Catherine spends hours walking the garden, seeking clarity among the herbs and flowers that have provided healing for so many others. She finds herself drawn repeatedly to the small grove where she and Klaus shared their final conversations, where the memory of his voice still seems to whisper through the rustling leaves. On the second night, as she kneels in prayer before the altar, Catherine experiences something that changes everything. Whether vision or dream or divine revelation, she cannot say. But she sees Klaus clearly, more vividly than if he stood before her in flesh. He is not in England, as they had planned. He is somewhere cold and dark, wounded again, this time perhaps mortally. His lips move in words she cannot hear, but his eyes speak volumes about love and loss and the courage required to continue fighting even when hope seems gone. The vision fades, leaving Catherine with absolute certainty that Klaus needs help she cannot provide from within these walls. But more than that, she understands with crystal clarity that her calling extends beyond personal happiness or even personal love. She is meant to serve something larger than herself, something that encompasses but transcends her feelings for one man. When she approaches Mother Superior the next morning, Catherine's decision surprises them both. She will accept the assignment with the resistance, not as a path to Klaus, but as a path to becoming who she is meant to be. She will serve the wounded wherever they fall, regardless of uniform or nationality. She will carry Klaus's love with her as a source of strength, rather than a burden of longing. The preparations for her departure happen with startling speed. New papers identify her as Marie Dubois, a nurse volunteering with medical units supporting French forces. Her habit is exchanged for simple civilian clothes that will allow her to move freely through countryside and forest. The transformation is both liberation and loss. Each familiar garment she removes, taking with it years of carefully constructed identity. Mother Superior provides her with medical supplies that could mean the difference between life and death for dozens of wounded fighters. Hidden within her modest luggage are antibiotics, surgical instruments, and morphine that would be worth a fortune on the black market. Catherine understands that she carries not just her own life in her hands, but the lives of countless others who will depend on her skill and courage in the months ahead. The night before her departure, Catherine experiences something she never expected: peace. Not the peace of resolution or certainty, but the peace of surrender to something greater than her own understanding. She writes 2 letters by candlelight in her small cell, pouring her heart onto paper with the knowledge that the words may never reach their intended recipients. The first letter is to Klaus, wherever he may be. She tells him of her decision, of her love that remains unchanged even as her circumstances transform completely. She promises to remember every moment they shared, every word they spoke, every dream they built together. She asks him to find happiness, to survive, to live fully whatever life awaits him beyond the war. Most importantly, she tells him that loving him has taught her new ways to love everyone, that their connection has expanded rather than diminished her capacity for service. The second letter is to herself, or rather to the woman she is becoming. Catherine writes to Marie Dubois, the person she will be tomorrow and in all the tomorrows that follow. She reminds her future self of the vows that brought her to religious life, the compassion that defined her service as a nun, and the love that has now called her to an even broader form of ministry. She charges Marie Dubois with honoring all of these callings simultaneously. As dawn breaks on her final morning in the convent, Catherine makes her way one last time through the corridors that have sheltered her for 8 years. She stops at the infirmary where Klaus recovered, running her fingers along the bed where he lay fighting for his life. The memory fills her not with sadness, but with profound gratitude for the gift of having known such love, however briefly. The car that will take her to her new assignment arrives as the morning bells chime the hour for first prayers. Catherine embraces each of her sister nuns, receiving their blessings and their promises to remember her in their daily prayers. Mother Superior is the last to bid her farewell, pressing into Catherine's hands a small wooden cross worn smooth by decades of faithful fingers. As the car pulls away from the convent, Catherine does not look back. Instead, she fixes her gaze on the road ahead, on the forest where wounded fighters wait for healing, on the uncertain future that calls to her with a voice she now recognizes as divine. She carries Klaus's love with her, but she carries something else as well. She carries the absolute conviction that love, properly understood, is not possession, but service, not holding close, but letting go. The woman who enters the resistance medical unit 3 hours later bears little resemblance to the nun who knelt in prayer just days before. Marie Dubois moves with quiet confidence through the makeshift field hospital, assessing needs with professional efficiency while radiating a warmth that immediately puts wounded fighters at ease. She speaks to each patient with the same gentle attention she once gave to Klaus, seeing in every face the reflection of someone beloved. When the resistance leader briefs her on their situation, Marie listens with the focused intensity of someone who understands that lives hang in the balance of every decision. They are treating casualties from increasingly dangerous missions, working with limited supplies and conditions that would challenge even the most experienced military surgeons. The mortality rate is devastating, the need overwhelming. Marie requests to see their current cases immediately. As she moves from bed to bed, her trained eye catalogs injuries and assesses prognoses with the skill honed through years of practice. But something else guides her as well, something that transcends medical training. She sees not just wounds, but the whole person behind each injury, the stories and dreams and loves that make every life sacred. Her first night in the field hospital passes without sleep. Marie works steadily through the darkness, cleaning wounds, administering medications, offering comfort to men who face death far from home and family. As she tends to a young fighter barely older than 18, she finds herself whispering the same prayers she once spoke over Klaus, asking for healing that encompasses both body and spirit. Near dawn, a new casualty arrives that stops Marie's heart completely. The wounded man is German, a deserter who has been fighting alongside French resistance forces for months. His injuries are severe, his chances slim. but something in his face reminds her powerfully of Klaus. As she begins the familiar routine of emergency treatment, Marie understands that this moment represents everything her journey has been leading toward. She works over the German deserter with the same fierce dedication she once brought to Klaus's bedside, ignoring the muttered complaints of other fighters who question why precious medical supplies should be wasted on any German, even one who has joined their cause. Marie's response is gentle but absolute. Every life has equal value in the eyes of the divine. Every soul deserves the chance for healing and redemption. As she stabilizes his condition and settles him for what she hopes will be healing sleep, the German deserter opens his eyes and speaks a name that sends shockwaves through her entire being. He asks for Klaus Weber, wondering if she has heard news of a fellow officer who turned against his own army months ago. The coincidence seems impossible, yet Marie knows that war creates connections that transcend normal probability. Through careful questioning, she learns that Klaus did not make it to England as they had planned. Instead, he was captured while attempting to reach Allied lines and has been imprisoned in a German military facility reserved for traitors and deserters. The conditions there are brutal, beyond description, designed to break both body and spirit before inevitable execution. Few survive more than a few months in such places. The news should devastate Marie, should send her spiraling into despair at the apparent hopelessness of Klaus's situation. Instead, it fills her with a resolve so powerful it surprises even her. She now knows exactly why she has been called to this place, this work, this moment in history. Her path forward becomes crystal clear, even as it becomes infinitely more dangerous. Marie spends the following weeks immersing herself completely in resistance operations, proving her value not just as a medical professional, but as a strategic thinker whose unique background provides insights unavailable to others. Her years in the convent taught her to read people with extraordinary accuracy, to sense deception and identify trustworthiness in ways that serve the underground movement well. She volunteers for increasingly dangerous missions, using her medical credentials to move freely through areas where other resistance members would face immediate suspicion. Her ability to treat injuries sustained during sabotage operations makes her invaluable to cells operating throughout the region. But every mission serves a larger purpose, gathering intelligence and building connections that might eventually lead her to Klaus. The transformation is complete. Catherine the nun has become Marie the resistance fighter, but the core of who she is remains unchanged. She serves those who suffer. She brings healing where she finds pain. She carries love as both weapon and shield in a world gone mad with hatred. The vows she once spoke to God, she now lives out in ways she never could have imagined within convent walls. 3 months into her work with the resistance, Marie receives information that changes everything. A contact within the German military structure reveals the location of the prison facility where Klaus is being held. The intelligence comes through a network of sympathizers who risk their lives daily to pass crucial information to Allied forces. The facility is heavily guarded, designed to be impenetrable, but Marie learns something that makes her blood run cold. Executions are scheduled to begin within 2 weeks. The German High Command has decided that maintaining these prisoners serves no strategic purpose. Klaus and dozens of other so-called traitors will face firing squads in a systematic elimination designed to send a message to anyone else considering betrayal of the Reich. Marie stares at the intelligence report until the words blur before her eyes. 2 weeks, 14 days to accomplish something that seasoned military strategists would consider impossible. The facility lies deep within German-held territory, surrounded by multiple checkpoints and patrol routes that make approach nearly suicidal for any unauthorized personnel. But Marie is no longer thinking like a nun or even like a resistance fighter. She is thinking like a woman who has found her true calling in the space between love and service, between faith and action. The same divine guidance that led her from the convent to the forest now shows her a path that seems impossible, yet absolutely clear. She approaches the resistance leadership with a proposal that initially meets with complete rejection. Marie wants to volunteer for a mission that has never been attempted, a medical infiltration of the prison facility itself. Her plan relies on intelligence, suggesting that conditions within the prison have created a health crisis that German authorities cannot ignore. Typhus and dysentery are spreading through the facility, threatening not just prisoners but guards and administrative staff. Marie's proposal is elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its execution requirements. She will present herself as a German medical specialist brought in to address the health emergency. Her years of medical training, combined with forged credentials that the resistance can provide, will give her access to areas of the facility that remain impenetrable to any other approach. The resistance commanders point out the obvious flaws in her plan. Her French accent, despite her fluency in German, could expose her within minutes. The forged documents, no matter how skillfully created, might not withstand close scrutiny by suspicious officials. Most critically, even if she successfully infiltrates the facility, extracting prisoners would require military support that simply cannot be provided without compromising dozens of other operations. Marie listens to every objection with the patience she once brought to difficult patients. Then she explains the aspects of her plan that address each concern. Her accent can be explained by her supposed Austrian background, a detail that will actually enhance her credibility given the medical training she received in Vienna. The forged documents will be supported by carefully planted intelligence suggesting that Berlin has indeed dispatched a specialist to address the health crisis. Most importantly, she is not proposing a prisoner extraction in any conventional sense. Her mission has a different objective entirely, one that requires understanding the true nature of love and service that she has discovered through her journey from convent to battlefield. Marie explains that Klaus, like many of the prisoners, is already dying. The conditions within the facility make survival beyond a few more weeks impossible regardless of whether executions proceed on schedule. Her mission is not to save his life in the physical sense, but to ensure that he does not die alone, abandoned, believing himself forgotten by everyone who ever loved him. She intends to bring him the sacraments, not the formal rituals of the church, but the deeper sacraments of human connection, of love that transcends circumstance, of forgiveness that heals even when it cannot cure. She will give Klaus the gift of knowing that their love endured, that it transformed her into someone capable of serving others in ways she never imagined possible. The resistance leaders struggle to understand a mission whose success cannot be measured in strategic advantage or tactical gain. But Marie's conviction is so absolute, her commitment so unwavering, that they find themselves agreeing to provide the support she needs. Perhaps they recognize something in her dedication that reminds them why they fight, why some causes demand sacrifices that transcend rational calculation. Preparations for the mission consume every waking moment for the next 10 days. Marie studies architectural plans of the facility, memorizes guard schedules and protocol procedures, practices her cover story until every detail becomes second nature. She receives intensive training in covert communication methods, learning to recognize signals and codes that could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. But the most important preparation happens in solitude, during hours of prayer and meditation that ground her in the spiritual certainty that guides this seemingly impossible undertaking. Marie knows she may not survive this mission. She knows that even if she successfully reaches Klaus, they may have only minutes together before discovery and death. Yet she has never felt more alive, more connected to divine purpose, more absolutely certain that she is exactly where she belongs. The love that began as forbidden attraction has evolved into something far more powerful, a force that compels her towards service, that encompasses but transcends personal desire. The night before her departure, Marie writes final letters to everyone who has shaped her journey. To Mother Superior, expressing gratitude for the wisdom that helped her recognize love as expansion rather than limitation. to her sister nuns, asking them to remember her not as someone who abandoned her vows, but as someone who discovered new ways to live them out. To Klaus, she writes words that she may never have the chance to speak aloud. She tells him of the months since their parting, of the wounded fighter she has tended while carrying his memory as both comfort and inspiration. She explains how loving him taught her to love more broadly, more deeply, more courageously. She promises that whatever happens in the coming days, their connection will endure beyond death itself. The morning of the mission arrives gray and cold, with fog that provides perfect cover for the first phase of Marie's journey. She dresses carefully in the uniform of a German medical officer, each detail checked and rechecked to ensure authenticity. The forged documents rest in her medical bag alongside genuine supplies that support her cover story. As the car that will take her to the first checkpoint disappears into the mist, Marie feels no fear. Instead, she experiences the same profound peace that settled over her the night before leaving the convent. She is no longer Catherine the nun or Marie the resistance fighter. She is simply a woman following love to its ultimate expression, service that asks nothing for itself while giving everything it has. The first checkpoint passes without incident. Marie's documents receive cursory inspection from guards more concerned with staying warm than scrutinizing papers that appear legitimate. Her medical bag, when examined, contains exactly what would be expected from a specialist responding to a health emergency. Her manner combines professional authority with the urgency appropriate to her supposed mission. The second checkpoint proves more challenging. An officer questions her accent, her assignment, her credentials with the thoroughness that could expose everything. Marie responds with the calm confidence of someone whose expertise is desperately needed, someone whose time is being wasted by unnecessary delays while prisoners and guards alike face medical crisis. When the officer demands to examine her medical supplies in detail, Marie seizes the opportunity to demonstrate her authentic knowledge. She explains the properties and applications of each medication with the precision of someone who has spent years saving lives under the most difficult conditions. Her expertise is so evident, so immediately useful that suspicion transforms into relief at her arrival. The final approach to the prison facility takes her through countryside that bears the scars of war like wounds that refuse to heal. Abandoned farmhouses stand as monuments to families displaced or destroyed by the conflict. Fields that once produced crops now serve as burial grounds for the casualties of a war that has consumed everything in its path. Marie sees in this devastation the same suffering she has witnessed in hospital beds and field stations, the same need for healing that has driven her from convent to battlefield to this moment of ultimate risk. Every choice she has made, every sacrifice she has accepted, has prepared her for what lies ahead. The prison facility emerges from the fog like a vision from hell itself. Concrete walls topped with razor wire stretch toward a sky that seems permanently gray above this place of despair. Guard towers punctuate the perimeter at regular intervals, their searchlights sweeping endlessly across ground where nothing grows. As Marie's car approaches the main gate, she offers one final prayer. Not for her own safety, though she knows the dangers ahead. Not even for success, though she hopes desperately to reach Klaus before it is too late. Instead, she prays for the strength to bring light into darkness, love into hatred, hope into despair. The massive gates swing open to admit her, then close behind her with the finality of a tomb sealing shut. Marie steps out of the car and into the most dangerous place on earth, carrying nothing but her medical training, her forged credentials, and a love so powerful it has transformed her into someone capable of walking willingly into hell itself. The commandant who greets her is a man whose face reflects years of brutality disguised as duty. He explains the situation with clinical detachment, describing the spreading disease as a logistical problem rather than human suffering. Marie listens while cataloging everything she observes, every detail that might help her navigate the facility and locate the section where Klaus is being held. When she requests immediate access to the medical facilities and prisoner quarters, the commandant hesitates. Security protocols limit access even for authorized personnel. But Marie presses her advantage, and explaining that delay could mean the difference between containing the outbreak and facing a catastrophe that would reflect poorly on his leadership. The combination of medical authority and implied threat proves effective. Within an hour of her arrival, Marie finds herself walking through corridors that house some of the most desperate souls in occupied Europe. The conditions exceed even her worst expectations, confirming that her mission of mercy comes not a moment too soon. As she moves deeper into the facility, Marie searches every face for the one that has haunted her dreams for months. She tends to prisoners whose injuries and illnesses demand immediate attention, using her genuine medical skills to build credibility while working steadily toward the section where intelligence suggests Klaus is being held. Time becomes her enemy now. Every moment increases the risk of discovery, of someone questioning her presence or recognizing inconsistencies in her cover story. But Marie moves with the calm efficiency of someone who has found perfect alignment between calling and action, between love and service. When she finally sees Klaus, the sight nearly breaks her carefully maintained composure. He is barely recognizable, his body ravaged by months of imprisonment and abuse. But his eyes, when they meet hers through the bars of his cell, still hold the gentle intelligence she fell in love with in the convent infirmary. For a moment that stretches into eternity, they simply look at each other across the space that separates captivity from freedom, despair from hope, death from love. Then Marie steps forward to begin the most important medical treatment of her life, not to heal his body, but to restore his soul. His body, but to restore his soul. Marie approaches Klaus's cell with the steady gait of a medical professional conducting routine rounds, though her heart threatens to betray her composure with its thunderous beating. The guard accompanying her shows no interest in lingering, eager to return to warmer quarters and leaving her to attend to what he considers the unpleasant duty of treating enemy prisoners. Klaus watches her approach with eyes that have seen too much suffering to dare hope for impossible miracles. When she speaks, her voice carries the crisp authority of a German medical officer discussing treatment protocols, but her words carry deeper meaning that only he can understand. She explains that she has come to assess his condition to determine what interventions might be possible given the advanced state of his illness. The medical examination she conducts is both genuine and symbolic. Her hands move with professional efficiency across wounds that tell the story of months of systematic brutality, cataloging injuries that speak of a system designed to break human beings before destroying them completely. But her touch also carries messages that transcend the physical, conveying through gentle pressure and careful attention the love that has brought her across impossible distances to reach him. Klaus responds to her questions about his symptoms with answers that sound clinical to any listening ears, but carry profound meaning for the woman who knows his heart. He describes pain that goes beyond physical suffering, weakness that encompasses more than bodily frailty, fever that burns with emotions he has carried through endless dark nights of imprisonment. As Marie works, she speaks quietly about treatment options, about medications that might ease his suffering, about procedures that could extend his time. To anyone overhearing, her words sound like standard medical consultation. But Klaus hears something entirely different. He hears about the resistance fighters she has treated, about wounds that have healed against impossible odds, about lives saved when death seemed certain. She tells him about a particularly challenging case, a patient who had lost hope completely until proper care restored not just his physical health, but his will to continue fighting. The patient had been suffering from complications that seemed insurmountable, but careful attention and the right interventions had transformed his prognosis entirely. Klaus listens with growing understanding as Marie describes how this patient had discovered new reasons to live, new purposes that made even the most difficult treatments worthwhile. When Marie reaches into her medical bag to retrieve supplies for his treatment, her movements are deliberate and careful. Among the legitimate medications and instruments, she has concealed items that serve a different purpose entirely. A small piece of paper containing words she has written for him. A wooden cross, worn smooth by faithful hands. A pressed flower from the convent garden where they shared their final conversations. Each item passes between them with the careful choreography of a dance performed in the presence of death itself. Klaus receives these treasures with hands that tremble not from weakness, but from the overwhelming power of love that has survived imprisonment, torture, and the seeming impossibility of their reunion. The letter Marie gives him contains words that she could never speak aloud in this place of listening ears and watching eyes. She has written about the transformation that loving him has brought to her life, about the wounded fighters who have benefited from compassion learned through caring for him. She describes the resistance operations she has supported, the lives saved through medical intervention that was possible only because she understood what it meant to fight for someone precious. Most importantly, she writes about forgiveness and redemption, about the possibility of peace that transcends the hatred consuming the world around them. She tells him that their love has become something larger than personal happiness, a force that serves healing wherever it is needed most urgently. Klaus reads her words with eyes that have not seen kindness for months, drinking in each sentence like water after endless thirst. When he looks up at her again, his face reflects understanding that goes beyond gratitude. He sees not just the woman who has risked everything to reach him, but the person she has become through the crucible of separation and service. He begins to speak in the same careful code they have established, describing his own journey through the hell of imprisonment. But his words carry unexpected strength, revealing that suffering has not broken his spirit, but refined it into something more resilient than before. He tells her about fellow prisoners he has comforted, about guards whose humanity he has glimpsed beneath their cruelty, about moments of grace that have sustained him through the darkest hours. Marie realizes with growing amazement that Klaus has undergone his own transformation during their separation. The gentle scholar she fell in love with has evolved into someone whose compassion has deepened rather than diminished under extreme duress. His love for her has become a foundation for loving others, just as her love for him has expanded her capacity for service. As they continue their carefully coded conversation, both begin to understand that their reunion represents more than personal connection restored. They have found each other again, as people who have discovered how love can become a form of resistance against everything that seeks to diminish human dignity. Klaus tells her about a young guard who sometimes shows small kindnesses, bringing extra water or allowing prisoners brief moments of sunlight. He describes how simple acts of acknowledgement, recognizing the humanity in someone trained to be brutal, have created unexpected connections across the divide of captivity. Marie responds by sharing her own experiences with wounded German deserters, men who chose conscience over orders and paid terrible prices for their decisions. She explains how treating their injuries taught her that redemption is always possible, that even those who have participated in great evil can choose a different path when offered genuine compassion. Their medical consultation continues for nearly an hour, far longer than would normally be permitted, but Marie's expertise and the obvious severity of Klaus's condition provide perfect justification for extended examination. She uses every moment to convey not just her presence, but her absolute commitment to the love that has brought them together again. When Marie finally must leave Klaus's cell, they part with a different kind of promise than the one they made in the convent. This is not a pledge to find each other after the war, for they both understand that Klaus may not survive the coming executions. Instead, it is a vow that their love will continue to serve others long after their physical separation becomes permanent. Klaus speaks the final words of their reunion, his voice carrying strength that surprises them both. He tells Marie that loving her has taught him how to love everyone, that their connection has shown him ways to bring light into the darkest places. He promises that whatever happens in the days ahead, he will carry their love as a source of courage for himself and compassion for others. Marie leaves the prison facility the same way she entered, with forged papers and professional composure that conceals the profound transformation taking place within her heart. But she carries something with her now that makes every future act of service sacred. She has touched the face of ultimate love, the kind that asks nothing for itself while giving everything it possesses. The story of Sister Catherine and Officer Klaus Weber ends not with reunion or tragedy, but with something far more powerful. It ends with the recognition that true love never really ends at all. It simply transforms into service that touches every life it encounters, healing that extends far beyond the original beloved, compassion that multiplies rather than diminishes when shared with the world. So the next time you find yourself torn between duty and desire, between sacred vows and human longing, remember their story. Remember that the greatest loves are not always the ones that end in earthly happiness. Sometimes they are the ones that teach us how to love more broadly, more deeply, more courageously than we ever thought possible. Love that transforms us into people capable of bringing light to the darkest corners of human experience.